What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And today we are getting into MACtion. Week 13, this is going to be the Wednesday doubleheader. If you like this content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like on the video. Those two things help a small channel like this immensely. So thank you very much if you've done that. It truly does mean a lot and help us a lot. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. And if you have requests later in the week, we do a request show on Friday. Anything we didn't get to throughout the week, please leave that in the comments below. But MACtion, my favorite time of year, we've got a doubleheader, so let's dive right into it with a fun game. Perhaps the best game in MACtion this week, because Miami, Ohio, and Buffalo are both 4-2 in conference with identical records. Both of these teams are scratching and clawing their way to get to the top of the conference. Right now, there's a logjam in second place. Western Michigan's at 5-1, and then we have an additional 5 teams tied at 4-2. 2 of them are playing in this game. Miami, Ohio is a 1.5-point favorite. The total is 39. There's been a lot of line movement in this game towards Miami, Ohio, which kind of a feather in my cap. I've been on the Buffalo side, so I'm happy to see that. But as far as resumes go, Miami, Ohio has had a pretty good start to the season. They showed decent competency in their non-con games, especially against UNLV. They probably should have won that contest. It was a 3-point loss at a 54% post-game win expectancy. And then they did a great job early in MAC play. Their marquee win was against Western Michigan, who currently sits in 4th. The only problem is their last 2 games, they lost to Ohio and Toledo, and their quarterback left the team. More on that in a second. For Buffalo, it's been up and down. They looked awesome against Minnesota in a game they covered in week 1, beat an FCS school, and since then they've lost to Troy. They played well against UConn, probably should have won, 57% post-game win expectancy, but a 3-point loss there. Beat Eastern Michigan, beat UMass, but then they lose to Akron, beat Bowling Green, and then lose to Central Michigan. So it's been up and down for Buffalo, and a lot of that is turnover driven. Now for injuries, Miami, Ohio does not have Deion Colzie or Kenny Tracy on offense, and more importantly, not an injury, but DeQuan Finn left the team. He is allegedly preparing for the NFL and not finishing out the season with Miami, Ohio, which is kind of perplexing. This team is not dead, and they were not dead last week when they had a really tough game against Toledo on deck, but he is gone now, which is a big loss for them. The first glimpse we saw of Henry Hessen was not ideal. He finished with a 40.5% completion percentage, 6.2 yards per attempt. He does have 3 big-time throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays, and 3 interceptions already, taking 6 sacks. And his receivers haven't done him many favors. He got an 8% drop rate on his passes alone, but did not look great for Henry Hessen. I'm not super optimistic this offense functions to the same caliber it was under Finn, but the infrastructure is not horrible. This is a pretty good MAC offensive line. They come in 108th in pass blocking, 45th in run blocking, so at least they can run the ball. They do rotate both of their guards. They're kind of playing 3 guards, which is interesting. Austin Uke is the one they try to rotate on the field, which makes sense to me. I wish they would just start him and play him in a full-time role, because when you look at the players that actually make up the group and the full-time starters, Drew Terrell's awesome, but Uke is their second best offensive lineman, and he would easily be an upgrade on one, if not both of those guards, whoever you decided to play him over. And other than that, Eric Smith has been below average, so you could pretty much use Uke on the field. A little bit perplexing, but regardless, this is still an above-average unit for the MAC. And their skill position players, they've battled a lot of injuries. Losing Kenny Tracy and Finn now hurts. So your run game is down to a 3-man committee. It's kind of below average. They come in 99th in rushing efficiency. Jordan Brunson's at 4.4 yards per carry. Recently, they've been testing out Deshaunte Jones, and he's been all right. Josh Ringer's been atrocious. In the receiving game, you have a big play threat in Cam Perry. He's not a full-time player. His role is growing, though, but he's at 726 yards, largely on deep bombs. Then Cole Weaver and Keith Reynolds work underneath. It's kind of a complementary group. They come in right around average. But you're facing a defense in Buffalo that's 35th overall. This is the strength of their team. They're good everywhere. Their weakest unit comes in coverage. They're 63rd. And even that, they've had success. This is hard to evaluate and why they're so volatile. Like, they stopped Joe Fanano from UConn. They stopped Noah Kim, who's one of the better passers in this conference, from Eastern Michigan. However, they allow Joe Labas 9.9 yards per attempt. I know Central Michigan doesn't throw a lot, so Okay, you could poke a hole in that. But A.J. Hairston from UMass, 8.5 yards per attempt. Drew DeShields, Kent State, 8.5 yards per attempt. Explain to me how you stop Fanano, but then you get beat up by A.J. Hairston. Garbage time, I know, played a role, but man, it's kind of perplexing. And the run defense has been a lot of the same. When you look at the player personnel, I think there are a couple holes at each level, and it largely is just because of their rotating, especially on the D line. For example, like Malin White is elite on the edge. You have Cornell Evans, who's kind of a hole inside, and they'll rotate a couple guys on that defensive line side. That's not the best unit, but fortunately, their linebackers are so good behind them that it's kind of okay if you have a somewhat leaky defensive line. Red Murdoch is awesome. Savion Brown has been fantastic to complement him. And in the secondary, you have two studs in Miles Greer and Kobe Blackwell. I know they lost McCarthrins to a transfer earlier this year. As long as you don't get completely exploited in one of those areas, like this is a pretty good defense that should be able to stand up to a backup quarterback in Henry Hessen. Then when Buffalo has the ball, man, if this team could just avoid some turnovers, they would be smashing teams. We saw that affect them last week with the fumbles. They had 5 turnovers against Central Michigan, and not all of them are on Roberson. Al-J. Henderson had a fumble and got benched at running back. I don't know, man. This is their problem. So with Roberson, he has a 58% completion percentage, 6.8 yards per attempt, 21 big-time throws. That's awesome. 17 turnover-worthy plays. That is not. And only 9 of them have been converted to interceptions. He's taken 16 sacks, which isn't terrible. The pressure rate's kind of middling. The drop rate for this team is 8.3%, so receivers could do him a few more favors. So on that, with the skill position players, I actually like their 3 wide receiver set of Nick McMillan, Victor Snow, and Josiah Gathings. Especially Snow and McMillan are both above 600 yards. So you've got some quality receivers. If they could hang on to the ball with a little more reliability, that would be beneficial to this team. And the running backs. Al-J. Henderson's just kind of had a bad year, man. He's had 4 fumbles already. Had one in their last game that cost him. His yards per carry is pretty low at 4.1. They've been recently giving more snaps to like Lamar Sperling and Terrence Shelton. Both of them are averaging more yards per carry. We'll see how that looks if either of them gets a longer look. It's just not been pretty. And they should be averaging more, especially Henderson, because this offensive line is 11th in run blocking and 51st in pass blocking. This might be the best offensive line in the MAC. I would argue that it is. They have 4 very clear above average starters. Trevor Brock, Tyler Doty are awesome. And even their weakest players right on average too. This is a great offensive line. So now you bring all that up against Miami, Ohio. They're 47th in total defense. They have a weakness. It is their run defense. They come in 100th. They have a pretty good edge rusher in Adam Trick, but he's one guy, and he doesn't really play on the inside. He's a pure edge. He doesn't affect the run defense. Your linebackers have to clean up so much from your interior. You can just run on this team, as we've seen a lot of teams do. UNLV, Northern Illinois, they've had success. Ohio and Toledo in the last 2 games. You're just asking a lot of Corbin Hondrew and Malcolm McLean, as well as Jackson Kuwatch. In the secondary, I wouldn't want to throw on this unit unless I had to. Coy Beasley, Silas Walters, and Eli Blakey are all healthy now. Walters was injured for part of the year, but they're back, and that's 3 quality players to start with. It's not the easiest path. Fortunately, Buffalo is a team that can both run and pass. I know they typically skew pretty pass-heavy. They're 31st in pass rate, 25th in pace, but I do think they probably come into this game with a little more of a run-first approach. As far as the spread, if Buffalo cleans up these turnovers, plus 1.5, I think is a pretty good value for this team playing at home. They do have a pretty decent home field advantage. This is going to be a cold game. It's in the 30s. No real like snow or wind, so that's fortunate for the teams, but it will be cold. Not that Miami, Ohio is any stranger to that. But anyway, we're on Buffalo plus the 1.5. That is the exact number we took as well, and one we will take to the window. Central Michigan, Kent State in our second game. Central Michigan is an 8-point favorite on the road. This is bouncing all over the place. I've seen 8.5, 7.5, just above 7. The total is 46.5. So Central Michigan is another one of these teams log jammed at 4-2. Kent State sits at 3-3. This is their record in the MAC for reference. But to get here, Central Michigan's been on this winding path. They just beat Buffalo in the last game, the huge turnover game for Buffalo. Prior to that, they lost to Western Michigan by a field goal, beat UMass, beat Bowling Green. They did lose to Akron, and it was a bad loss. It actually could have been worse. They lose 28-22 with a 6% post-game win expectancy. But that's the biggest story with the Central Michigan team so far this year. They've played one of the weaker MAC schedules. You have Eastern Michigan, Akron, Bowling Green, UMass. All of those teams are at the bottom. They recently started playing their more difficult schedule, so we're going to see how this persists throughout the year. With Kent State, definitely better than we thought they were going to be. This team just beat Akron in overtime last week, a very sound win. Their other victories are over UMass and Bowling Green. And Bowling Green has not had their starting quarterback for more than a month at this point. With that said, 90% post-game win expectancy. They've also played close in some losses, including Ball State, who's just not a very good team overall. And Buffalo, they only lost by 3 points earlier this season. So injuries in this game for Central Michigan, the newest one is Angel Flores at QB. He splits time with Labus, but he's missed the last 2 games. They did lose his starting interior offensive lineman, John Iannuzzi, earlier this season. For Kent State, Matt Pajust on the offensive line, Angelo Stockstill. He is their best DB. He's been out for a while. And then Atiq Muhammad, he also has been out for a while. He got stretchered off in one of their previous games. Don't expect to see him anytime soon. With Central Michigan, the biggest question is Angel Flores going to play? Because when he does, they run this 2 QB system. Labus is the pure passer, 72% completion percentage, 9.9 yards per attempt is incredible. 6 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays, and only 11 sacks, which that is not really that good considering how often they're dropping back. This is one of the run-heaviest teams in the country, so even though he's only taken 11 sacks, that raw number looks good. The pressure-to-sack ratio is north of 20%, so when they drop back, he still takes a good amount of sacks. They will drop this pass rate even further if Angel Flores can play. He is the team's leading rusher despite missing the last 2 games. Averages 5 yards per carry. He's awesome. The backfield consists of a 3-man committee. They use the hot hand a lot here. I think there's positives to all of Biggins, Cornish, and Townsend, whoever they use on that given day. And surprisingly, I was very surprised to see this. 24th in receiving efficiency. Part of this is your offense is really funky. They're using a fullback a ton. They're running at the second highest rate in the country. That can often just lull defenses to sleep. So you do see them with an efficient receiving attack. They currently have Langston Lewis at 413 yards, Tommy McIntosh at 310, and Tyson Davis just shy of 200. So when you pass at a bottom 5 rate in the country, sometimes you can sneak up on teams, and they have. The offensive line is awful. So this does not help Labus when they have to throw. They are better at run blocking. They're 99th. Compared to their second to last in pass blocking, 135th. They only have a couple decent average offensive linemen, I think is the best way you could put it. They're rotating multiple positions. You're seeing a couple left tackles, Jacob Booth, Jacob Russell. You're seeing some guards. Brady Plusha is awesome, but they will rotate even like their center spot. Apisa, Pume, and Ryan Blummer rotating. There's very little consistency here. And to help with some of this, you do see the heavy personnel packages. You see Rusty Van Wetzinger at fullback a lot. I'm surprised they've been able to overcome this, honestly, and I think it will probably cost them against better teams, which Kent State probably not that. They're another team that's sort of hanging in the bottom of the conference. Central Michigan very lucky to play this schedule. They're 125th in defense, that Kent State that is, and they've been beaten up bad in some games. Taquan Roberson got them for 11.7 yards per attempt. The list goes on. And, they've also not played the most difficult schedule. You look at what Kent State has faced, like UMass, Bowling Green, Ball State. Those teams elevate your numbers. They don't depress them. So they're another team I don't really buy the overall defensive metrics, and they're not good to begin with. The player personnel is pretty weak. Jamon Mathis is a good edge rusher. A couple decent guys inside, but the biggest complaint I probably have is the amount of rotating they do. So you don't even get full glimpses of your best players. With that said, like Akron sometimes, because their defense is so bad, like they played almost 99 plays in a game this year. I think it was their last game. So, Kent State, if they're going to have games where they're allowing their defense to play on the field for 99 plays, it's going to be tough. CJ Young at linebacker is awesome. They don't have much else. The back end, Kenyon Williams has been good, but they lost their best defensive back, Angelo Stockstill, earlier this year. So it's kind of rough going with Kent State. I don't really think they have a strength on defense. Jamon Mathis brings their pass rushing up to 60th overall. They're going to have to win through that. Unfortunately, Central Michigan just kind of neuters it with their they don't want to pass. So we'll see. I expect Central Michigan to move the ball on Kent State's defense. Conversely, Drew DeShields has been awesome for this Kent State team. They got to be very happy that they popped up with him. 57% completion percentage, 8.5 yards per attempt, 11 big-time throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays, and only 10 sacks on a 39% pressure rate. I mean, this is getting close to wizardry in the pocket for him. He's not working with a lot. The offensive line is arguably the worst unit in the country. I think you could make that argument. 136th in pass blocking, 134th in run blocking. They have one average player who just, I'm not talking above average. I mean like right on average. It's their center, Dustin Morrell. Everyone else is horrible. Your skill players are decent. You can't run the ball, which is no surprise given that offensive line. But even when you look at yards after contact per attempt, forced missed tackles per attempt, Gavin Garcia, Jordan Newman do not get it done. They're a very inefficient RB tandem. But the pass game is still somewhat solid. Cade Wolford is solid, 449 yards. Deshaun Martin is at 364. Wayne Harris is at 281. And you would get the occasional bomb from Darius Clark is awesome. Awesome. They had one in their last game. And it was funny. I went back and looked at the box score against Akron because you have I think it was an 89-yard touchdown from Darius Clark. He played 6 snaps. 6 snaps. One of how he catches a near 90-yard touchdown. Give me a break, man. If you can tell, I bet Akron in that game. Anyway, with the struggles they've had and the limitations they've had, I mean, credit to Drew DeShields navigating the situation that is poor. Now they will face a Central Michigan defense that comes in 53rd. First things first, I've not been impressed with the opponents they faced. And they do have a run defense that ranks 103rd. That matches up poorly against Kent State, who probably is going to look to throw the ball in this game. They've been balanced this year, but they've had more success throwing the ball. Game script does not project to favor them. The defensive line rarely gets beat. They consistently allow 4 yards per carry around there, but they never really get crushed, Central Michigan, that is. Michael Heldman's had a great season on the edge. They're 28th in pass rushing efficiency. The linebackers are doing a good job cleaning up what the defensive line leaves behind, Jordan Kwiatkowski and Dakota Cochran. Secondary is the best part of this defense as a whole. Kalen Carroll and Caleb Spahn are both excellent, but that's not how you want to beat Central Michigan. You want to run the ball. It's just weakness on weakness here. So I don't think Kent State really is going to be able to do much on the ground. I lean Central Michigan minus the 8, but on the back end, the model makes us very efficient. We have it minus 8.9. We have a couple points of value on the under, very, very little here. So by far the best wager for us on the day is Buffalo getting points. We're probably going to stay away from Central Michigan, Kent State. But as usual, the injury report is very important in this conference. Perhaps there will be something that breaks at kickoff. Make sure you're paying attention to that. But that'll do it for us today. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any feedback, please leave it below. Otherwise, good luck. We will see you next time.